This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.
Support for this program comes from the Gail and Tom Benson Charitable Foundation, committed to funding educational causes.
Hello, I'm Marcia Cavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Although the Saints have yet to have a victory this season, there was a big victory for the Caesars Superdome this week as an extended lease with the state was agreed to. This opens the way for more big events coming to the stadium. New Orleans city elections are coming too next Saturday, October 11th. We'll look at the latest on that. Elsewhere, as Loyola University opens a new dorm, both it and its neighboring Tulane are requiring students to spend more time living on campus. The concern is what impact will that have on area housing rentals? In politics, there is an unusual controversy in the campaign for Orleans Parish Criminal Court Clerk, where one of the candidates is saying that he was wronged on a distant murder conviction. We'll be looking at these stories plus positive ratings for the new airport with our Informed Sources. Errol Laborde, producer of Informed Sources. Don Ostrom, Channel 12's Future Watch reporter. Robert Collins, Urban Studies professor at Dillard University and political analyst, WVUE TV Fox 8, and also Verite News. And Tony McCauley, staff writer, The Times-Picayune, The New Orleans Advocate. Tony, we're going to stick with you because it's finally been inked. We have a new lease between the state and the Superdome.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. It was a big ceremony in the
Saints, I should say, the Superdome and the Saints. Yes.
Superdome and the Saints organization.
Yeah.
Yes, Mrs. Benson. It was a big hoopla ceremony yesterday underneath the Mrs. Benson's box and the governor's box at the stadium, and it was one of those deals where everybody said it was a win-win. It's a long time coming. Mrs. Benson pointed out that the negotiations have gone over 2 administrations now, so that's both Landry and all of Governor John Bell Edwards before. They only managed to get an extension last time of 5 years, so this was the big one they've been trying for a long time. And what had held it up really was a lot of concerns on the current administration, Landry administration, about some of the terms in the old deal that was negotiated in 2009, which they saw as overly generous to the Saints. Now, the Saints said yesterday that they were very, very happy with the deal, 2 verys. So they had to give up some things, but they didn't have to give up all that much, really. I think they got it structured in such a way that it's 10 years initially, and then they have options, 5-year options, 4 or 5-year options thereafter. So that gives them a lot of flexibility compared to some other NFL stadium deals. And then on some of the other main points, they had to give up a little bit on the real estate. That's kind of their side real estate deals that are part of the overall deal that the state did with the Saints organization over the stadium. So they had to give up some rent on Benson Towers, for example. It'll amount to about $200,000 next year, so it'll go from $9.3 million down to $9.1 million. So, and that's
does the state get that instead now?
That the state pays that less, as it were. So yeah, it goes back to the state.
So the state has a better deal now.
And another one of the points, for example, was the state was losing, according to the state, losing about $1.5 to $2 million a year on the food concessions, and they restructured the deal. It's complicated now; it's a formula, but they hope to be breaking even or making some money on that with the new terms of the deal. And there are many other terms which we don't probably have time to go into here now, but both sides expressed happiness. I think behind the scenes, the state was saying, you know, we got what we could get because that previous deal in 2009 was locked down pretty hard for the Saints. So there were a lot of things they couldn't really push too hard on. So everyone is expressing happiness now. And the other thing now is that we can move on to try to get a Super Bowl in 2031. because we'd missed a deadline with the NFL to be on the short list for that last month. But they left the window open that perhaps Mrs. Benson could persuade Roger Goodell to let the Saints be in consideration for that.
All this happened in the same week when the Superdome was awarded the college championship game, the CPT game, which is big. It's like the college Super Bowl.
Yeah.
28.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, in fact, the day after, Governor Landry was in the Superdome 2 days in a row to announce both of these things, and it also happened in the same week. I thought it was quite interesting that the mayor and the city council discussed what they saw as the shortfall of the Super Bowl in terms of the amount of additional tax they were able to get. It was below 10 when they'd been expecting 15. Now the organizers like Jay Cicero from the Greater New Orleans Sports Foundation, who's the lead for a lot of these big events to try and get it, he said, well, the good news is that there was 10 million extra tax, whatever the projections had been, there was still 10 million extra from the Super Bowl. But it kind of brought up the question, Oliver Thomas, who of course is running for mayor and is a city council member, brought up in that discussion, we should really have a hard look at the cost versus benefit of these big events for the city. I think, this is a city that does big events, so I don't think there's any question that we do big events.
But they also said Taylor Swift didn't do what was expected. So if the Super Bowl and Taylor Swift didn't do,
What can?
well, I think it's the way you're looking at them. I think the way one looks at them. I mean, what happens after the Super Bowl? There was a lot of city boosters, economic development boosters, put out a report that said the economic impact was something like $250 million, and a lot of people around town said, who saw that? Because some businesses benefited a lot right. Didn't see much benefit from it. So I think the question is really, these things are of course a benefit. It's what the city does. It's the industry of the city, the primary industry of the city. I think it's just really a matter more of the transparency, which is also an issue with this whole stadium deal, because one of the issues has always been, since the previous one was struck, was there was very little visibility on the terms. So I think going forward, more visibility on all of these things would be a good thing.
Let me ask you real quick, what kind of guarantee for the Saints staying here in years to come, as perhaps the team would be sold? Is there anything in this new contract about that?
That's the really big question now going forward. And my colleague Jeff Duncan did a column on this. And of course, the speculation begins immediately. Gail Benson has made ironclad guarantees that she would never move the team from the city. But there's a reason they structured the deal with the terms they did. She at some point will not be the owner of the team, and it may be around a decade from now or a little longer. And then the question is, would it be Todd Graves or other local billionaires that would buy it and be certain to keep the Saints here, some sort of consortium? That speculation has already begun, although people don't want to be public with it, obviously, while Mrs. Benson owns the team. But that question will be there until there's a succession, whether it's, after she sells the team, decides to, organize a new owner, or after she passes and we go through that process.
But we want them all to stay here for a long time to come.
Right, but I should just say that the NFL has a big say in all of this. In fact, she made a point yesterday of saying, this now has to go to the NFL for the NFL to sign it. So, they loom large in any discussion about NFL teams.
Okay, indeed they do. All right, Tony, thanks a lot.
You bet.
All right, looming large also over this area right now is an upcoming election for mayor, council members, sheriff in Orleans Parish.
Yeah, next week is the election. The polls are showing with this election, we got some pretty strong leaders, and especially the citywide elections. Poll came out last week, the UNO poll by Dr. Ed Chervenak. And in the big race, for mayor, Helena Moreno has 49%, which is pretty much what she's been running in that area all during the election. And so that's pretty close to a primary victory. In the sheriff's race, Woodfork is leading, and there's a couple of council large races, which we'll talk about, that show strong leaders too. And so there's those who are leading strong. Now, so 77% of the voters have either going to vote for the other candidates or not vote or are still undecided. But most of them are the 77% are among the three people, Moreno, Duplessis, and Thomas. Usually your undecided voters, by the time you come to election day, they do one of two things. They decide not to go to the polls, or they'll just go with one of the front runners, because that's what they know. I mean, they're not going to go out and vote for somebody at the bottom of the list they never heard of. And so the top three are going to get some more of those votes. And so that alone would probably push Moreno up past that, into that 50% if she holds on to that. And so the prospects look pretty good. But the interesting election is the at-large race, where you have two. It used to be everybody ran in one pool, but what they divided them up, where you have two at-large districts. One of them is J.P. Morell's district, and he's the incumbent, and he decided to run for re-election. He could have run for mayor, and that would have changed everything we're talking about right now. But J.P. Morell is the other one. And then the other one, it would have been Helena Moreno's district. Of course, she's out because she's running. And the polls show Matthew Willard leading in that. And Robert, we were talking is that I think we're seeing some new patterns developing here as far as at-large races and mayors and racial significance, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so there used to sort of be an unwritten rule behind the scenes that the two at-large races would be biracial. So in other words, one district would have a black councilman, and one district would have a white councilman. And the various organizations and the various groups used to cut deals to basically keep that in effect. Over the years, that's sort of broken down. We see racial patterns just in New Orleans breaking down in general. Here we have a white candidate that's leading in the mayor's race. And so I don't think that really applies anymore. Obviously, we can still see racial patterns in voting in Orleans Parish, but it's not the same as it was 20 or 30 years ago, where the black organizations and the white organizations had to basically cut deals to say, okay, this is a white seat and this is a black seat, and so we'll agree to only run black candidates for this seat if you agree to only run white candidates for that seat. So those whole racial ties have sort of broken down, and that's probably a good thing.
So this is the last week of the race coming up. What do candidates have to do to try to distinguish themselves? They
probably the voters are decided. The last at Fox 8 we had a televised debate where I expected there'd be a lot of elbows, because it was the final televised debate, and all of the candidates were very respectful of each other. They all stayed on message, but nobody did anything to really hit another candidate with negative a negative attack to reduce their numbers. So now I think it's just get out the vote. I don't think you're going to change very many minds in the last 10 days of the race. So right now it's our last 7 days of the race. So right now it's just about targeting your vote and physically getting people to the polls.
In sort of image, Moreno has a really good package, if you will. A lot of people know her in that she was in television, she was a state legislator, she's been a council member at large, she's attractive, she's very smart, and so that's a good thing to have. Oliver Thomas, people know, because he's been around a long time as a council and as council member at large. Now, he did have his legal problems, but he's an image that's out there. I don't think Duplessis people know quite as well, but it almost comes down to that sort of thing, because there's no real one issue. There's not this issue you can point out that say this divides this race.
No. And I think the two challengers, Duplessis and Thomas, they needed to find an issue to separate themselves from Moreno, and they have not. And so I agree with you, Errol. If the election was held today, a sufficient number of those undivided votes are going to break in direction of Moreno to put her over 50%. Now, of course, I always want to stress the election's not being held today. Mm-hmm. So if you have a candidate that you favor, you still need to get out and vote for your candidate. Everybody needs to get out and vote, regardless of what the polls say.
And get those undecideds to go on out there, and as well as your own supporters, go to the polls and vote.
Yes.
Okay, guys, thanks a lot. Don, let's go on over to you, because there's an issue now in the Uptown area. Tulane, Loyola now has their students staying on campus, well, a good part of them. So where does that leave all of these little units around to be rented by students?
Well, lots of big news on both campuses. Uptown Hall at Loyola, which is its brand new dorm, housing 612 beds, so not 612 students in different room configurations. It has its official ribbon cutting next Wednesday, although students are already living there. Both universities have changed policy to now require, with some exceptions, students to live on campus freshman, sophomore, and junior year, which has led to a whole lot of housing available around both universities. It's hard to quantify the numbers because when you look at a housing unit, you could look at a double that's just 2 bedrooms. You could look at one of those doubles to dorms that's 10 bedrooms, but it's about 10 to 15% more units available in the Uptown area than were at this time last year. The universities will tell you that they have made this change because it's financially better for them, not because students are paying for more housing, but because the longer students live on campus, the better their grades are, the better their academics are, the longer their retention is. So they stay on as students and go on to graduate. They also say they had safety concerns, not just with crime, but with the quality of the rental housing in the Uptown area. Students who are dealing with flea issues and fires and other problems at their rentals that the universities couldn't control. So they said, hey, they also wanted to create community where everybody could live and work and study together. And they created great communities. They have wonderful, modern, updated housing with all sorts of amenities around, but food courts that rival the best malls in America and options on campus. But what does that do off campus? And it's a tricky question. It may encourage property owners to take better care of their property and return some of those dormitory-style residences to single-family homes. It might cripple those same homeowners with their tax bills and insurance bills and no longer having rent come in. So Arthur Sturbkow, the real estate expert, said, you may see housing up for sale. You may see landlords who have to choose to go to Section 8 housing and take government-subsidized housing, which you can't do right now because the government's shut down. But that sort of thing might happen. It's also leading, perhaps, hard to quantify also, to some commercial businesses shutting down because there isn't the university population among them. In the last few months, both the Starbucks and the PJs on Maple Street in the Uptown area have shut down permanently. Why? Is it because is it because of a nationwide issue with the economy and a $6 coffee being too expensive for most folks? Is it because the college students aren't there buying them? There's no way to know the answer to that, but there is some concern that the commercial businesses that were supported by those residents, the university residents being around the Uptown area, will also now suffer. So it's hard to say which came first, whether it's the students being there, whether it's subpar housing, whether it's good housing. There's just a lot of availability now. And there are fabulous new buildings on campus. The universities say that's good for them in the long run because it attracts more students, and it attracts more students who stay for longer, which ultimately will lead to more people being there who want to live off campus in their senior year and their graduate student years, which could also then benefit the same residences that are sitting vacant right now.
So the freshmen, sophomore, juniors now,
Correct.
They have to stay on campus. There's some exceptions.
There are
If somebody's from
exceptions
here-
if you live within about, it depends on the school, but if you live in about a 50-mile radius, you can stay home with mom or dad, and some other exceptions,
Right.
but not many.
Okay, already done. Thanks a lot. Robert, back over to you because there's a controversy that's sort of sparked up with the criminal court clerk race in Orleans.
Yeah, so in Orleans Parish right now, we have a clerk of criminal district court. The incumbent is currently Darren Lombard, and he has 2 challengers, Valencia Miles and Calvin Duncan. Now, this office is important because not only is it the custodian of all the records of criminal district court, but the clerk of court is also the chief elections officer for Orleans Parish. So the clerk of court administers the elections. So it's an important office. But most years, this is sort of a quiet, sleepy affair. But this year, this race is drawing a lot of attention because there's a lot of strange stuff going on. So one of the challengers, Calvin Duncan, he has a very compelling story. He's a former Angola inmate. He was arrested at 19. He was convicted of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life. And then the Innocence Project, which is the local nonprofit that litigates for inmates, took his case in 2003. In 2011, based on new evidence that sort of exculpatory evidence that they found, they were able to get the DA's office to agree to a plea bargain where he pleaded to a lower charge, manslaughter, and then he was given credit for time served, and he got out in 2011. And then in 2021, more exculpatory evidence was located, and so he went back into court to have his vacation vacated, and Judge Nandy Campbell of Criminal District Court actually vacated his conviction. So in his mind, he's exonerated. So he's been telling that story of exoneration. Well, the problem is that story is a compelling story, and I think politically his opponents don't like it. And so what happened is Darren Lombard actually went into civil district court and asked for an injunction to prohibit him from telling his backstory, and Lombard's argument is that he was never actually exonerated. His conviction was simply vacated, and so he's telling an untruth.
And our AG Merle also entered into the fray of this as well.
Yes, and
weren't some of the records lost?
Yeah, so some of the records were lost. So the Attorney General of the state, Liz Morrell, she also takes the position that he was not exonerated, that his vacation, that his conviction was simply vacated. Right. And I know we're splitting hairs here, but for lawyers, those words are important. And she sent him a cease and desist letter, and she also told him, stop saying you were exonerated. You can only say that if you proved your actual innocence, but you did not prove your actual innocence. Your conviction was simply vacated. So she's threatening to also take legal action against him. Now, people need to know, people file these injunctions. They're almost never granted by judges simply because the bar is so high, and judges tend to take the position, it's up for the voters to decide. We're not going to issue injunctions in those cases.
Now, Duncan, who served all those years in prison, he became a lawyer, right?
Yes, he did. He got out of jail. He got a bachelor's degree from Tulane. Then he went and got a law degree. He is a practicing attorney now, and also what's interesting is that he's actually out fundraising. I actually went and pulled the campaign finance reports. So in the last 3-week period for September, Duncan has raised $71,000. Lombard has only raised $4,000, and because Duncan has been able to raise so much money, he's actually been able to go on television.
Right.
And so he has television commercials running with his compelling story. And so that's why the Lombard camp is afraid of him right now, because he's raising money and running a campaign.
And he's maintaining that exoneration is the word to use.
Yes.
We have to move on right now. Okay, thanks a lot, Robert. Tony, we're wrapping up with you. And our airport has gotten some nice rankings.
Yes, we were talking about one important building earlier, and this is another really important building for the city, $1 billion building. Obviously, we got a new, it was completely new in 2019, so it's in its 6th year now. And there's a lot of data you can look at to see how it's performing, but one of the things that people watch every year is the J.D. Power Rankings, which is a survey of actual users of the airport, people like us. And so this year they moved up a couple of slots. They were actually number one in the what they call the large airport category, which is the 2nd tier after the mega airports like JFK and so on. We were number one in the first year post-COVID that they had the rankings, and we're down somewhere like around it was 8th, this year, which was up a couple of slots. But what you actually look at is the number, because it's people voting in categories by number. So we rose by 17 points last year, which is people telling the survey gatherers that what they love about the airport is the design and the food offerings. I mean, we all know how different it was from the previous airport, which was pretty lowly ranked. It's one of those things that is important for the people who run the airport now, because they're out having public discourse, public meetings about the next wave of investment. They will need to add perhaps 15 more gates over the next, or by the end of the next decade, given the growth that we're seeing there. And there's a lot of other investments that they would like to have. You have to keep investing very large sums in these big buildings, these big pieces of infrastructure in the city, especially a city like ours, which depends on people coming and going. And that's the first impression that they get. So one of the things that they've actually started on this year is an $85 million road to connect the old terminal, which is now the long-term parking, as well as what they hope will be a hub of commercial activity to the new terminal. And what they would like to be able to do is to put in a people carrier between those two campuses, as they refer to them, so that they could really develop the old one economically.
So people carrier, you mean that moving walkway? Is what you're talking about?
Yeah, the kind of thing I'm trying to think of. Like a light rail. It's a light rail is another way of referring to it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean the last one that I found, I think it was at Phoenix, cost about $700 million. So those things are expensive.
Yeah, expensive, definitely. Our passenger level, real quickly, where are we now? We came back from...
Well, we had a great first quarter because we had the Super Bowl. It was an exception. We were back to, and last year we were going into the first quarter this year, we were back at pre-COVID levels. But it's been a tough year subsequently because of economic headwinds, because of foreign travelers not wanting to come to America for reasons that we all know, and so we're it's a cloudy outlook at the moment, but
But people like our airport.
But people love the airport.
And they like the food there, that's for sure.
Love the food.
Okay, all right, Tony, thanks a lot. Other stories, E, over to you, around the table.
Yeah, on the voting next week, there's going to be a charter amendment proposal, which says that it's an amendment that provides that there shouldn't be any laws discriminating against somebody because of conviction history, like for a job or something. And so if somebody wants to apply for a government job, that they can't use conviction history. But they got the words arbitrarily and unreasonably. So you got a little bit of wiggle room right there if somebody, in fact, does have something really bad on their record.
All righty, Dawn?
Hoping to get some answers next week on LOFSA, the Louisiana Financial Student Aid Organization, being virtually shut down all week and inaccessible with technical difficulties. It's the organization that administers TOPS and scholarship programs for the state and also oversees the 529 Louisiana Start Savings Plan for college savings for people, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars at stake. And right now, nobody can get in. So hopefully we get some answers.
Money that people invested into that, right?
Correct.
Put into that, and they can't get to it right now.
Correct.
Okay. Robert.
Because I've talked about the declining significance of the all black political organizations, both on air and in print before. But here we have something interesting in this campaign. We have three former competing organizations, Coup Soul and TIPS. They put together a unity ballot, I guess, sort of to combine their power. We'll see if it works to make them effective again.
Changing political times. Tony, over to you.
It's National Chicken Festival, Fried Chicken Festival this weekend, and that started by Cleveland Spears about 10 years ago as a small event in Lafayette Square. Moved out to the UNO campus, and last year they had 130,000.
Wow.
Big money generator.
People like their fried
chicken. And they
chicken.
invest about $1 million, the sponsors, about getting on to $1 million in community projects.
Very good. All right, guys, thanks a lot for being here. Thank you all for joining us. See you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.
Support for this program comes from the Gail and Tom Benson Charitable Foundation, committed to funding educational causes.
This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.